Alright, so we are going to see if we can get this thing streaming at some point here. Alright, we're live. I'll go ahead and tell the world. Doompa. Streaming. Oh, excuse me. Game dev. It is quite hot today, and I am going to try to focus despite that. And what we're going to do today is we are going to organize the system so that it no longer randomly does things wrong. So here's an example of what we've done so far. While everybody was away, I added in this piece here. And this is one of these pieces that that is a social room. So if the crew walks through it, they're supposed to have a it's just supposed to be a place where it adds extra time to their task, but in turn reduces the exhaustion level. So you put those in your setup, and you should have the ability to have everything to have them work for longer without getting exhausted. But there's something wrong with the setup, and it's time to try and debug what it is. And to do that, I'm going to move everything back to the way it was so that I don't have any more unknowns. Drop this back inside the A-class ship here. And what I did was I moved it to its own unique level. Is this on or off set? I think that's on, yeah. I moved it to its own unique level vertically, and I think that was what caused it to break, but we'll know more in a second here. So with this in mind, what we're going to try and do is reset the ship. But I have a feeling that we're going to have it just barf. Let's find out. Well, that's taking quite a while, isn't it? Yeah, so it's not doing anything. You can see how it says there's no tasks available, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There are, in fact, tons of tasks available. It's just that they're not connected, and it might be because this is off. Yeah, so for some reason this is not on the actual axis. Let's try that one more time. And I think that reset ship is not doing what I think it's doing, so... but see how it says no tasks available? Well, you'll notice that there is something wrong with this setup. There's some purple stuff here, and it's just kind of randomly scattered. I don't know if you can see that on Twitch. That's the sector system, and the sector system is malfunctioning. So what we need to do is add in a sector reset for all of our setup. And I think the easiest way to do that is inside of the functional room, which contains the sector lists. We're going to make it so that when this room boots up in the first place, it resets all of its sectors. And you can see how there's a couple of these. We have a create sectors, which is what we're going to need to call. And that is the primary function. So let's go ahead and add this in here. Public or protected void start create sectors. Now the problem with this is that creating the sectors here might happen after the ship gets a little bit confused. Like if the ship recalculates after the sectors are calculated, then we'll have the wrong values here. So what we need to do is make sure that when the ship is doing its thing, it has to have all of the mapping figured out by the time that that starts up. Here's the reset map. We're going to put that in awake. So protected void awake. Reset map. But we're also going to want to make it so that all of the elements, the path elements, which I guess are not in this list. So let's open them up. There we are. All of the path elements are also going to want to be reset. Now there is in fact a reset function for all of them in the static section. Reset pathing, here it is. So we're going to call that when we boot up our ship. And hopefully that will make it so the sectors show up correctly. Let's find out. Oh, it is really hot. I'm going to go ahead and, well, I guess it doesn't really matter. By the time the air conditioner has a noticeable effect, it'll also have cooled down. I guess I'll just sweat it out. Alright, so now we've got it working. So the problem was that we didn't have any kind of organized... For fuck's sake. Someone decided to stand directly outside my window and just randomly whack things. So I guess I will turn on my air conditioner. Alright, well that was exciting. So now you can see that the purple here is very clearly limited to specific places, whereas before it was like over here and doing weird stuff. But the purple on this dorm isn't working properly. And I think that it is working. Okay, so it is working properly. It's just got a width of 0, so it appears a little bit funny. So now the question is, if I restore it back to what it was before, where it's on multiple layers and includes a another class of object. Oh, that's actually not the right bridge for this. We need this bridge. And then bring this over here. Notice that the purple is all screwed up in this mode because it's got the wrong value cached, so it's starting to display the wrong value. But that's okay. There we are. So we should still get a fully functional setup like this. If not, alright, great. So you can see that we now have a more fully functional setup. And this means that we can now... No, that's not what I wanted. We can now set this up to do whatever we need it to do with more freedom. We no longer have to continually remember what we've reset and what we haven't reset. But what I do want to do is take a look at this from the side so that I can really see that verticality in play. Yeah, see how we've got that wonderful verticality coming up? The labels are crap, and maybe what I should do now is make the labels less crap. So making labels less crap is a struggle. Even Google can't do it right. So I can't say that I'll be able to do it right, but the number one thing I need to do is make sure that they point with more authority so that they don't overlap with each other like this. But in order to do that, I'm going to need to be able to attach them on any of the axes. I'll go with 8 different arrangements, or I need to be able to draw a line from wherever they are to the point. And the latter is probably a little bit easier, so let's go ahead and try that on for size. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pop up one of those prefabs. They're actually already here, the TaskUI prefab here. I don't know if I saved it. I did save it. Okay, so I've got a TaskUI element here, but we'll just go ahead and work with a random one. It doesn't really matter which one we pick. And you can see how it's got a couple of things in it, like it's got the optimized solar port task. And what we're going to do is we are going to have this task be something where we don't have to set it. We'll just be able to do it manually. We'll just be able to do it automatically. So protected void awake. If task equals null, then task equals get component in parent task. Easy enough, right? And that will allow us to leave it as null. And we'll put a tooltip in to that effect. Leave null for auto detect. But this part, task name, task duration, task crew summary, these are actually text elements. They are not strings. So the task itself contains all the data that we need, and we can just stick one of these TaskUI elements in without any sort of link, and that'll allow us to just spam them wherever we need them. So that should be fine, but right now what we've got is a simple system where the only thing this TaskUI does is continually update the data on this particular form. We're going to need a couple more objects instead. One of the other things we've got is a system for tracking it down. So here it is, this tracker here. The TaskUI is a canvas, and that arranges to draw it, right? But the 3D tracker is the actual thing that gets drawn, and it includes the widget as well as the overall object. So this is like the line that gets drawn here, and this is the object with all the crap in it. So let's go ahead and call this line. Let's go ahead and call this backdrop. And with that in mind, we should be able to turn it on. I bet it is already on, and I just can't see it because we're not zoomed out enough. Yeah. No, it's off. Oh, the alpha's probably just turned down. Yeah, just turn that up for now. So we'll be able to see what's going on and have it do stuff. So this is what we currently have, and I can change out the visuals later, but we need to add in the functionality first. One of the functionalities we've got is this tracker, which just tracks a position. And what we're going to need to do is have this tracker keep in mind all of the other active trackers and budge us around so that we don't get stuck all the time. Now the problem then becomes drawing a line from this object to wherever we're trying to get to. But we'll start by augmenting, no, not the task, by augmenting the 3D tracker. Public, that's not how you spell public. Public, static, list UI track 3D, active, equals new list, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so don't fill it in for me then. There we are. And what we'll do is when we wake up, we will add ourselves to that list. And when we unwake up, we will unadd ourselves to the list. So protected, void start or awake, active.add this, and then protected void undestroy, active.remove this. And the key here is that we are including a lot of inactive objects onto this. And that's, you know, something where it's fine. We're not going to worry about it too much. But we have to remember that some of these are going to be invisible. And to that end, we're going to have something which toggles so that we can tell whether or not we actually need to do any tracking. And the thing is, we can just make that the enabled for the UI 3D tracker. We don't need to have it be something magical. We can just use the built-in enabled function. But the problem with that is that we're not currently setting it. So over here in the task UI, we check and see what's going on right here. You see that? So what we're going to want to do is when the alpha changes, or sorry, when the activeness of our task changes, we're going to want to identify the UI track 3D and tell it that that is the case. And the easiest way to do that is to A, track whether or not it was active last round, and B, throw an event. So public bool task active last frame equals false. No problem, right? So down here in the update, we are going to go ahead and say bool task active this frame equals task.running. And we can just replace this so we don't keep asking it, because I think it actually does some checks that take a little bit of time. And then at the end we can say task active last frame equals task active this frame. And what we'll do is we will just do a quick little Boolean event. Or we could just have it be two different Unity events. We'll make it two different Unity events for now. Public Unity event. Oh look, there's no Unity event built in. We have to go ahead and add it. On task activated, on task deactivated. So down here, we'll go ahead and say if task active last frame does not equal task active this frame, then do some stuff. And we'll put this inside here. And we will go ahead and say if task active this frame, then on task activated.invoke. That's not how you spell invoke. That is a lot of random garbage to add in when I type I. Else on task deactivated.invoke. Thank you. Ooh, it's hot. It is muggy. So we are now activating and deactivating the task. But we aren't actually doing anything yet because we don't have a function for it. But that's easy enough. We'll just save everything and shrink it down. And then over here in the task, we are going to go ahead and have it point to that tracker. So we've got on task complete here. This is what we need though, on task activated and deactivated. And the reason we're doing it here rather than up there is because this way we can just dump these inside of a task and they will automatically track the task, which is handy, much more handy than having it hard-coded. Perfect, right? So with this in mind, what we have is a setup where they'll stop tracking once the task turns off. Now the only problem with that is that when the UI element detects that the task is done, it actually fades out, which means that while it fades out, it won't continue tracking. And if the player moves the camera during that time, it will slide around the ship in a funny way. So we want to change the UI, the task UI element so that it does something a little bit different. If it's active, we want to immediately do this task activated.invoke. And then we can set this here. But otherwise, if it's deactivated, we have to wait until we've faded out before firing. So else if cg.alpha equals 0. Pretty basic. So that means that we won't turn it off until we are done showing up. As soon as we vanish, we stop tracking, and that will allow us to really easily know which objects on the screen are active, and that means that we can determine whether or not we're overlapping with any of them. So let's go ahead and create that function. So to do that, here in update, we're going to have to go through and check and see whether or not we are intersecting with any of the others. Sorry, I've got like something on my glasses. I think it's been here all day. It's really bothering me. I think maybe I scratched my glasses directly over the middle, which is really obnoxious. It's directly in front of my eye. That might be a permanent scratch. These are like 3 years old. This is the important, exciting stuff that you come by for, right? Alright, so in order to track back and see whether or not any of these things intersect, what we need to do is we need to keep track of our own bounds and then compare them to all of the other bounds. So the thing is that this UI track 3D object is actually on the main thing, and we should be able to get the bounds of the main thing. Let's go ahead and take a look and see whether we can. So if we get a rect transform, can we get the bounds of the rect transform? We can get the rect. All right, well, since we can get the rect, we have to work out how to do that fast, because searching for it via get component hundreds of times a frame is going to be dumb. So if we don't have a rect transform, then get it. And then we can get ourselves a rectangle. Perfect. So in this way, we can quickly get our rectangle and any of our other active elements rectangles, and just check and see whether they overlap with anything. So we can do that by just doing .contains and set it as a point. But I believe that it actually can do a... No, it's just vectors. So there's got to be a rect overlaps. Yeah, overlaps, here it is. And you can see this is a very easy way to quickly check and see whether or not these rects are overlapping. So to do that, we're just going to be able to hop on into this active list here, walk through it, and see whether or not any of the other active recs actually collide. Bool, public bool collides with anything. And then we'll have a bool only later, only check later adds equals false. And we'll get to that in a second. But basically what we're going to want to do is start up with an int start index equals 0. And then we say if only check later adds, then start index equals our index on the active. So active dot index of this plus 1. And that'll give us a good start index. And so what we'll do is we'll just go through and check all of the values. So for int a equals start index, a is less than active.count, a plus plus, and then in here we can go ahead and do a lot of calculations like UI track 3D u equals active a, and we say if not u dot enabled, then continue. If u equals this, then continue. Now we can check, and we say rect us equals rect, and that way we won't recalculate it every time. We can go ahead and then do if us dot overlaps, and then we check with u dot rect. And if this happens, then we have an overlap, so we need to move. And we can do this in any direction we want, but basically I think that what we're going to want to do is have some kind of drift or something, because right now we set the value. See right here, we just go, oh, set it right there. So even if we offset it, we're going to end up offsetting it by an amount that doesn't really make sense and gets lost every frame. I guess what we can do is just move it away arbitrarily. So really what we want to do is move to an arbitrary location. But for now, we'll just go ahead and put a debug in. Debug.log task.name UI overlaps with the UI for, and then u.task.name. And that should allow us to at least see whether or not this is working. And we'll go ahead and return true. Return false. There we go. So let's go ahead and check it out. Yeah, that should work. Grind, grind, grind. The name task does not exist. Oh, that's because these aren't tasks. These are, in fact, just transforms. So transform come on. Whew. All right, so got any more errors? No, seems to be fine. Let's go ahead and hit play and see what happens. You can see how those probably should overlap, and you can see how they do. Pilot ship UI overlaps with the UI for pilot ship. That's odd because this specifically says not to worry about that. Well, let's go ahead and put in some debugs here. So debug.log a plus u.name or u.track.name. And we'll go ahead and see what's up with this, because it shouldn't be able to collide with itself. That's kind of the point. So either I've got multiple objects or I've just mistyped something or whatever. So here you can see it still happens, and both of the first ones are pilot ship. So we've got several things tracking the pilot ship task. Really. So here is the 3D tracker for pilot ship. And what we might have is one of these other ones might simply be locked to the wrong one. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in 3D here, and we're going to take all of these 3D trackers and track nothing. That way, they should oh, that's not what I wanted to do. So right now, the 3D trackers are tracking something, but it's not really what we want them to track. What we're going to want them to have is the option to, if they're null, we'll have them do some gymnastics. Because otherwise we're going to have this problem a lot. Because even though the task UI is not for a task, it's tracking the wrong function, it's tracking the wrong object. That's why it's so confused. So what we're going to do is in Awake, we are going to check and see whether or not we have a track. And if we don't, we're going to do some gymnastics. First off, let's put in a tooltip. Tooltip. Leave empty to track first non-canvas parent. First parent after canvas parent. There we are. If track, then we grab it. So get component in parent canvas dot transform dot parent, and then we just say track equals that. So with that in mind, let's see whether or not this works. All right. Here you can see now we're getting something useful. Optimize solar port UI overlaps with the UI for the pilot ship. Maintain engine UI overlaps with the UI for pilot ship. But I don't see more than one. I don't see some of these. It seems like they're... Oh, you know what's happening? They shouldn't be updating if they are inactive, so I'm not sure what's going on here. Okay, well, let's go ahead and hit play. So here you can see we've got a couple of objects, but we've only got two. We've got the maintain engine and the pilot ship, but we should have three because we have 3 crew members, right? So that means that one of these is active. It's just not correctly faded in. Well, we can tell which one it is by looking here. Pilot ship UI overlaps with pilot ship. So we still have 2 things for the pilot ship? What is going on here? I think that, of course, I'm an idiot. So the problem with it is that all of these objects are built to turn off, but none of them start turned off. There we go. Better. So you can see how maintain engine is the only thing firing right now, but despite that, there are in fact several other objects. For reasons unknown to me, they aren't correctly showing up in the view. But they actually have their full, like, squiggles. These squiggles here clearly indicate that there's stuff going on in the back. So the question is, why they're not showing up? So maintain engine is showing up, but it's showing up in a really dumb spot. That doesn't make any sense. Is it not tracking properly? Because that's not where the engine is. That's weird. Well, let's look into this and see what the heck's going on. I knew this was going to be a debugging day. Also, my ear is making clicking noises. Ooh, that's really distracting. Okay, so here's the maintain engine. One of these is maintain engine. Is this the right one? No. Is this the right one? No. Is this the right one? There it is. So they're just on top of each other, and that's the problem. So they're not properly tracking their parent. And why is that? Well, if we take a look at the 3D tracker, this one is supposed to be using the maintain engine. It's tracking the correct place. But maintain engine is in... I can't do it because the UI is so badly set up in the editor here. I guess we'll just do it badly. Come on! There we are. So this is actually in the wrong spot. No, wait, it's in the right spot. It's back there. That's where it's supposed to be. So why isn't it tracking back there? If we look at it in the game, it's tracking up here, which is on the wrong side of the ship. So it should be over there. It should be floating almost off the top of the screen. What we're going to do is move the camera so that we can get this off to one side so that we can really tell whether or not they're moving in the first place. So they're just not moving. So here's the maintain engine, and the UI track is not turned on. So I think what the problem is I forgot to actually, yeah, okay, so I'm just an idiot. I forgot to make all of these actually do the thing that they're supposed to be doing, which is why none of them are doing the thing that they're supposed to be doing. I know that's a shocker, but it happens. No, wrong button. And we're just going to go ahead and save this task UI. Can I not save it? It's not going to save. Okay, so for now we'll just do it manually, and then later on we'll make this a nested prefab. Come on. Wow, I can't click either. I am falling apart today. So that one's already turned on. Manage solar port. So that was 4. Weren't there 5? I can't tell which of these is which, though, so let's... This one. I don't know what went wrong with this one, but it's probably... Oh, it's just not... It's in the thing we're not looking at. That's fine. We'll set it up. There we go. Now let's try it out. With less sucking. There we are. That's better. I think we're zoomed in, though. Oh, we have lots of extra debug logs here, which we don't need anymore. But you can see how these overlap, and that's because the rects involved are really big. I think that they are substantially larger than the actual value we're showing. If we take a look at this using our rect editor here, you can see how it's the whole screen. So the task UIs have a rect that is just wrong, But the 3D tracker rect should only be this size. You can see how much smaller this is. So I don't know why the 3D tracker rect is being is colliding. It shouldn't be colliding with anything. It's quite small. So it may simply be that that is the first frame. Oh, I didn't pause it. I stopped it. Let's try that again with pausing it. So if that's just one frame, that's a different story. No, you can see how they both say that they're overlapping, even though both of them are in fact quite small. The pilot ship 3D tracker is... oh, it's over there. What? So the maintain engine 3D tracker is in the right space, but the pilot ship 3D tracker is weirdly off-center? Because this isn't the right pilot ship. This is a different pilot ship. It's the other bridge. This one. Brilliant! There we are. So here's the 3D tracker for pilot ship. And this one is the active one, and it shouldn't overlap with the maintain engine at all. So let's go ahead and spam out the rects that we're testing so that we can really take a look. So debug.log track.rect debug.log u.rect u dot, yeah. There, like that. Grind, grind, grind. M. Corrales says, hello, are you working alone on this project? Yeah, just me. Puttering along. Alright, so here we can see the rects. And you can see how they're both negative 50, 100, 100. And they're negative 50, 100, 100 even when I move it around. So this means that the rect that I was hoping would give me the rect is actually giving me the rect as it is local to the object, which is friggin' useless. I don't need to know how wide it is. I need to know where it is on the screen, including how wide it is. But that means that this rect command is not giving us anything useful. It's giving us the right size, but it's nowhere near the right place. It's in the middle. It's at 0, 0, 0 the whole time. So in order to make this rect actually work, either we need to add in the position or we need to you find a value that includes that. Like get local corners would work. But that's getting local corners. I would need get world corners. But get world corners is dumb. I would have to then turn that into a rect. How dumb. Is this really all I can do? Okay, so vector 3 fc equals new vector 3 4. M. Corrales says he's the lone wolf as well. Did you do all the models? Yeah, I did all the models. This doesn't have any built-in... This doesn't have any asset store models in it. I don't have any problem working with them, but there's nothing even vaguely like what I need for this game. So, fc. I don't believe it actually returns anything. No. So then in order to actually get the rect r equals new rect, in order to do that, we have to pass in some values. And what we can do is we can pass in positions and sizes, but we can't pass in 4 corners. So that means that basically the idea of using this 4 corners, I have to manually calculate out all that shit, which is what we'll do. So float width equals fc0.x fc2 minus fc0.x, something like that. Float height equals fc2.y minus fc0.y. And then we will go ahead and float vector 2 center equals fc0 plus fc1 plus fc2 plus fc3, and then we'll just say center divided by equals 4. And then here we'll go ahead and pass in center and new vector 3, vector 2 width height. He asks if I'm self-taught. Well, I'm old enough that no one was around to teach me. So it's not like I say that everybody should be self-taught or anything, but it's just that if you're old, if you're over 30, then there was nobody around to teach you this shit. All right, so now you can see that we don't have any collisions. But we do here at the end. Let's go ahead and take a look here. We have some down here at the very end, which is hopefully the point. Main engine, yes, these actually do collide, and you can see that the rects are quite good. That's good. I like them. So 100 by 100 is correct. It's all correct. Hooray! So that works. It's dumb, but it works. The only problem being that we don't actually know whether or not I don't know how to move them so that they're not overlapping. M. Corrales says that he's also self-taught and also over 30. So there you go. The end of the summer heat here, it's killing me, so give me a second. Just drop shit. All right, so once we've detected that these rectangles overlap, what we really need to do is move. But here's the thing. This happens after update, but it doesn't happen like at the same time. Each one happens independently. And because of that, the ones that happen first are going to move to the correct position, and then they're going to check if they overlap with anything. But the ones that haven't moved yet aren't in position. So what we actually need to do is have an update and then a late update. And then what we'll do is we will say, does it collide with anything? True. And then what will happen is it will only check for collisions to one side of it. And that means that we won't move everything twice. We'll only move things once. So to do that, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to figure out by how much it overlaps and then move it so that it's offset by a different amount. So to that end, we're going to need to know how much overlap there is and move it. So vector 3, vector 2, P0 equals rect.center. Vector 2, P1 equals u.rect.center. Except for we want to use us, not rect. And then we say vector 2, or float range equals P1 minus P2. Sorry, P1 minus P0 dot magnitude. And that'll give us the range. And then what we do need to know is how far we are. And so what we're going to say is float x scale equals us dot width, there it is, plus u.rect.width. And because we're asking for the u.rect so much, we're going to want to grab it and store it. So rect them equals u.rect. There we go. And then float y scale equals us dot height plus them dot height. And what this is we're going to want to put at least that much between us. So we're going to take a look at the delta, at the range, but this range is the wrong one, so we'll just cut that out. We're going to want to make sure that we are at least this far apart. So if math.abs p0.x minus p1.x is less than x scale, move us on the x-axis. Then what we're going to do is we're going to move us by enough to make it so that we're that far apart. And to do that, all we have to do is figure out how much we're short by. So float motion, or move, equals x scale minus this. But unfortunately, we're absoluting it, so that means that what we really need to do is change it a little bit. So let's go ahead and store all these values. X off equals p0.x minus, or p1.x minus p0.x. Float y off equals p1.y minus p0.y. And then here what we'll do is we'll just do all that math without having to continually do math.abs.abs math. So here what we can say is we want to move in the correct direction. So if x off is less than 0, then we're going to want to set it up to move based on the negative x scale. So float offset equals x scale plus x off. And then, if we have a scale of 200 and we're negative 190, that'll end up being 10, and we'll move 10. And then we'll just want to invert that and move that far to the left. So rt.position plus equals new vector2 negative offset 0. Can I not do that? Curse you! Okay. So that means that we've got to do is say that it equals it like this. Because obviously that's much simpler. Now, not parent. Why did you put parent there? There we are. Why are you barfing? Oh. Just this? What's going on here? Why can't I get this to work? Oh, it wants vector 3s, and it's not willing to automatically convert. Okay, fine. You happy now? No more barfing? Hooray. Otherwise, we're going to want to do it the opposite way. Perfect. And then we just repeat the process for the y-axis. It looks like M. Corrales said the same thing, that it was he wanted a vector 3 and I was providing a vector 2, even though casting between them is automatic. But whatever. Exciting stuff here. Nope, that's not it. That's it. All right, so in theory, this will work. Shall we see if it's true? Also, it only checks for the first overlap. So if there's multiple overlaps, this will end up only reacting to whichever one was highest in the hierarchy. Which may end up meaning that we have overlaps anyway, but hopefully we'll still see an improvement. Now, we're not seeing any... They should be overlapping here, right? I mean, this should be multiple things. It's not running, so it looks like for some reason the tasks aren't activating as fast as I thought. You can see how the tasks are strange. They're not really working quite as they should. It says that all crew is busy, but all crew shouldn't be busy. There's only one task active. So what are all the crew busy with? If we take a look, this one's maintain engine, this one is maintain engine, and this one's optimize solar port. But the solar port isn't being optimized. It's not running. So apparently there's something wrong with how the tasks are marked as completed. That's an interesting bug. It's not a very complicated setup. So let's take a look. Over here in the task, let's close everything else. Over here in the task, what we've got is a setup where when we actually finish it and complete it, it happens here. We say running equals false, and then we say, okay, it's no longer, it's done. And then we go ahead and we look through all of our workers and we mark that, we say that they have a completed task. So maybe the workers aren't getting properly added. Let's take a look. We take a look at the optimized solar port, and basically when it hits running, we'll pause. So you can see now that Alice is the one that is responsible for this particular object, and it is correct. Optimized solar port is active, but it's also active here. Is this the other solar port? Yeah, it looks like that's interesting, because this is actually Alice only. So even though another person is assigned to it, it's only Alice that shows up. So if we take a look at Alice, Alice is correctly optimizing the solar port, but Bob is also set to optimize. Oh no, wait, that's George. George is also set to optimize the solar port, the same exact task, but he's not on this list. So my presumption is that Bob or George or whoever was never told that they needed to stop being on that list. So here you can see that we set let's take a look and see whether that happens. Let's take a look and see whether or not we get an error. So if we take a look here, none of them are marked as having errors. So my guess is that there's something wrong with them as how they set up, and it might be So I'm trying to figure out whether or not this is a problem when the task is assigned, or whether or not this is a problem when the task is completed. So we've just got a couple of assignments here. Let's take a look. Alice is assigned to maintain engine, Bob is also assigned to maintain engine, and George is piloting ship. Alice and Bob can't both be assigned because only one worker is required. See, required worker is 1. And Alice is the only one that's actually on this list. So that means that when the task is being assigned, Bob is being told to assign himself to the task, but is never actually signed up for the task. He's volunteer working, and we don't need that. So we're going to have to figure out where that's happening. It's probably happening in the crew quarters, since it's the one doing all the task assignment here. So here is where we do our hourly update. We get all of our resting crew, and we take a look through all of the tasks that we have. And I think what might be happening is we might have the same task in this list twice. Due to the way that the system function searches, we may end up with a repeated task. And the easiest way to avoid that is to make sure that the tasks actually don't get added like that. So we'll go ahead and get this tasks here. There it is. When we when we get this comparison, when we get these tasks from the chain tasks list, here it is, what we do is we go through and we find all of the tasks and we just add them. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to make sure that they're not already in the list. Because I think what's happening is it's searching through the system and it's finding the same task twice, and that's why it's going a little bit nuts, because we don't actually check and see. We assume that if a task is in the list, we already checked and made sure that the tasks were ready to go. So if the task is in there twice, we're going to assign it once, and then we're going to assign it again when it comes up later, and we don't want that. That looks a little bit more like it. There's still some errors in things not popping up properly. That optimized solar over here, it doesn't seem to be popping up. It's clearly happening, but it's not popping up. And I think it might be because I turned something off or hid something. Let's go ahead and take a look and see which of these is the one that's on the side that's giving us trouble, which is over here. Here it is, optimized solar. Path is okay. The task UI is what's giving us issues, but it shouldn't be. Unless this is the wrong 3D tracker. No, it's all fine. Oh, it's probably this. No? So this is currently an active task. Here it is running. And that means that this should be pretty opaque. And you can see how the alpha is there. So the question is, why isn't this showing up where it's supposed to be? And maybe it's because it's not where it should be. No, it should be fine. For some reason, they are really aggressive about zooming way out for this, which is super obnoxious. Go, go, Jesus. The mixing and matching UI elements inside of 3D Elements is a problem because you can no longer zoom in on shit. But what I can't see is where the pivot is here. Oh, because I'm on the wrong widget. There we are. So the pivot is in the right spot. It should be popping up there. Yeah, so that's definitely all located in the correct place. The question is why it isn't visible. If we take a look at this 3D tracker and we zoom out to it, you can see that it should be here, and it's apparently just off the top of the screen. So if we take a look at the scene in the game, we can't see it because it's off the top of the screen. But why is it off the top? Oh, because we moved it. It was colliding, so we moved it. But we moved it the wrong direction. Okay, okay. So, I don't know whether we moved it the wrong direction or whether it was just bad luck. I think we moved it the wrong direction. Let's go ahead and... I think this moving has to be rethought. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and stop here for the night. I will think about how to make this motion work a little bit more gently, a little bit more interestingly. And then I will come back on Saturday and finish this up. I'll probably have already finished it by then. But at that point, we're going to be very close to having something functional. It won't be a game, but all the pieces will work. And from there, I can start to add in all of the gamey bits, like portraits and buying new things and clicking to add objects. And that's going to take maybe, 6 months. See you folks around. Thanks for watching.